Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, a forum for business owners and senior executives to share the experiences about the elements that drive their success. Your host is Robert Brill, CEO of BrillMedia.co.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Cody Miles, founder at Brandcave and Ashore. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, man. Glad
Tell
to
us
be here.
tell us about how you got started with Ashore. It's an online proofing system, and tell us about Brandcave. Tell us how you got from one step to the other step and your story there.
Yeah, so I have always worked in a B2B marketing context. First company I ever worked at out of college was for a software company called Mortgage Dashboard, and eventually I wound up being the creative director at a very distinguished PR firm in Dallas. While working at that PR firm, I realized that there is a lot of, and I'm sure you could probably relate to this being an agency owner yourself, there are a lot of inefficiencies in the collaborative and proofing process when it comes to any kind of creative deliverable. I was the creative director at that PR firm, and so I'm in charge of creating all these assets and then getting feedback on those assets. And one thing I realized there really early on was that one, clients are difficult to get feedback from often,
Right.
Especially the larger companies, because they have a lot more priorities than the things they're working on with you. And the second thing is they often speak a different language than creatives in general. So they give really poor feedback. They don't know the language that we know as creatives. We say there's a black overlay with a 50% opacity on top of this image. They go, there's ghosting on the image. So it's really difficult to get feedback. And then when you get the feedback, it's difficult to understand it. At this agency, there were two people that were hired full-time, and their job was literally just to check boxes, to follow up with clients, to get feedback, to help push projects along, because at the end of the day, agencies don't get paid until the projects are done, at least in a lot of circumstances. I've changed the model over at Brandcave. So I eventually quit at Idea Grove, and I started Brandcave back in February 2015. And I ran a creative agency, and the issues that I experienced at Brandcave were kind of just exponentially it was exponentially experienced with Brandcave as well. And then running a small team, it just took up so much time. So internally, we developed a product that would help automate those workflows where we have our stakeholders who are approving digital proofs, and oftentimes several stakeholders, and there's an approval stage, and after all these people approve it, it has to go to the second stage. And we created a software internally where we could just send things to our clients and get feedback. We ran this. I ended up going to essentially every major creative agency in Austin, and I showed the software to them, and they said, we need this too. So we ended up building it and putting it on the market. And in a very short amount of time, it acquired about 4,000 users, including users at Uber and AT&T and Adidas and Coca-Cola and Disney. So the idea for this product was quickly validated, and that was the start of Ashore.
My question was gonna be, how did you bridge the gap between creativity and coding and software development? But as I look at the details around Brandcave, when we talk about user design or user experience, there's a lot of technical sort of, you're building stuff there. Can you talk about how you bridge that gap?
Right, yeah. I'm a semi-technical person. I didn't write the back-end code for Ashore, but I did write the code for the front end. I'm a user experience designer by trade. Brandcave does a lot of UX design for different software agencies in Austin and Houston. They often will have clients that are building an MVP, and so there's a waterfall process that I follow with them where the client comes to Brandcave and we work with them to establish those business requirements, determine the flow charts, build the user experience prototypes, and then create the specifications, which then go back to the agencies, the software development agencies. So the gap, the gap there is still large, because at the end of the day, I'm no CTO. In fact, this was a problem we ran into with Ashore. I was in the early stage operating as that CTO, managing the development team, and I made a lot of calls that were really bad. Ultimately, it required us to rebuild the product entirely, which we did, and we launched that in January. So we call it Ashore 3 today. It's a different product entirely from Ashore 2, but it's a whole new thing.
What were some of the learnings you got from those ill-advised calls that you talked about?
I think the most important thing when you're building software, there's a lot of things that risk that we mitigated just because we helped build MVPs. The biggest thing that we ran into was the architecture, the database structure of Ashore 2. There were workarounds, but there was limitations to velocity. So ultimately, we decided there were a lot of features that we wanted to build. We clearly had validated the idea. Like every software startup, you tend to do things quick and dirty because you don't want to spend a lot of money on an idea that's not going to work. So when we decided this works, let's do it right, we decided to take the enterprise approach, and we built on .NET Core, which is a very modern framework. It's very fast. It splits the back end from the front end. We used Vue on the front end. And so not only did we rebuild it from scratch with a brand new architecture, but we worked in all of the user feedback that we had acquired in the previous years before that. So ultimately, what we felt like we developed at the end of the day was a product that was just supreme in every way to the previous product. And the feedback for that was, that ended up being the case really quickly. We launched it in January. We now have more users on Ashore 3 than we did on Ashore 2. We tripled the price of the product, and no one blinked an eye. And in the middle of COVID, we tripled the price again, and no one blinked an eye. And I think we're still underpriced for the product that we're serving. The idea here is that the product is built for people like you, people like me, who run these agencies that have people external to our company reviewing our files. So it's not like a typical project management software where you're inviting people into your account, right? I don't want my customers at Brandcave, right, my clients, I don't want them logging into a system. They won't do it. So instead, I've built a system where we send them these authenticated links. They very quickly identify themselves. It appends them to the proof. They then now have a cookie that's saved on their browser, and they never have to do this again as long as their cookies aren't deleted. So every time they open one of my review links, it automatically pins them. On my end, I'm getting this beautiful audit log that says every change that's ever happened to this proof, starting with when it was created, who registered to the proof, who viewed it, who downloaded the files, who approved and not approved, new versions, all these different things. And then on top of that, you can drop on top a workflow automation platform that says, send this proof to these amount of people. And when they all approve it, send it to these amount of people. And then, by the way, for each one individually, I can set different reminder frequencies. It says, remind this guy every single day of the week, which, by the way, most of our users do. They're brutal, man. They send reminder notifications on Saturdays and Sundays. So all these things are built in with Ashore. What we've discovered is that the approval process is, and I'm not just throwing this number out, we have the data on this. It's 50% faster when you use our platform. So you get the feedback 50% faster.
It's amazing how I think as businesses grow, how much entrepreneurs don't value speed. There's,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, like a good example is Calendly. Like I spend $15 a month, and it saves me so many multiple tens of hours scheduling stuff, and I get so many more meetings, and it's just such a great tool. And it's like when entrepreneurs are starting out, it's like you're counting every penny, but
That's right.
You're saving pennies and you're wasting $100 bills.
That's so true. And there's also a reality that when you're in a startup or you're running lean, you have to do a lot of unscalable things to get to a point where you have the resources to scale. I mean, it's a reality that we start a creative agency. What are the things, I need the Adobe Creative Suite. It's going to cost me about $50 a month. I need an office space. Well, that's $1,800 a month minimum, right? You go through all these different things. And you start saying, this is a nice to have in some cases, and in other cases, it's a need to have. Think of Airbnb, right? The whole way they went about acquiring users initially was going door to door and asking people if they'd be interested in renting out a room or couch. So I respect it when someone says, you know, I don't have the funds for that. I get that. I've been there too. I've done things the hard way. And in the end, like for Ashore too, you end up spending more time and money building it the right way eventually. So there are lessons learned.
As you go through the various iterations, the various versions of the tool of Ashore, tell us about how you proved the model, how you got clients, your first 100 clients that you got on the tool.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Ashore is still operating primarily from an inbound marketing, search engine optimization based approach. So even before we launched the product, I put up a landing page. We had a request beta. We did our keyword research. We wrote the articles. We optimized those articles. We tracked it using, you know, modern SEO analytics platform like Moz. You know, we did the work. We attracted the users. We built up the beta list. Whenever the product was announced, we sent campaigns to that beta list. We let them know that they can join for free. They did. Ashore at that point was a freemium model where you could send up to 10 proofs a month for free. And then now it's a 2-week free trial. And this has always been a better method for converting and generating leads than doing request demos, these sort of things. So today, we still primarily focus on an inbound marketing approach. However, we have been looking at alternative lead generation sources. One thing we did last month was we partnered with Dribble, which is a high-profile design community. And we did some sponsored content for them. We wrote some content on their behalf. We also did some display marketing with them. And that worked out really, really well. We also, so the benefit of having Brandcave as the sister company to Ashore is that we have a whole team of people who know what they're doing that can work on the marketing for Ashore. So the keyword research, the articles, the posting these things, developing the website, this can all be done internally. And that saves us a lot, to be fair. Lately, we've also been focusing on doing more PR and outreach. So
how has advertising helped your business, if at all?
We do PPC on AdWords. That's the primary channel for advertising. We've experimented with social advertising, and we're in a B2B context. You have to remember that. So I think when we're talking about consumers, doing display ads on Facebook and other PPC methods, those work a little bit better. What I found, and I mean, running Brandcave for 5 years, more than that now, and Brandcave mostly works in B2B context. There is a higher buyer intent when you are working in channels like AdWords, because people are already searching for the product or solution like yours.
Of course.
So that, as opposed to the cheaper ads that you might find on Facebook, I found to have a higher ROI. So that's true for most B2B software companies, technology companies. The other advertising channel that you would consider in a B2B context would probably be things like Capterra, G2, you know, these other aggregate sites where there is PPC.
Have you done any LinkedIn?
No, actually. So Brandcave is awful at social media. We don't sell it. We need to come to agencies like yours for that kind of thing. Yeah, we probably do a very poor job on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is interesting to me because it is when you think about the two top social, when you think about Facebook as the dominant social platform, and we do acquire B2B leads for our clients, and the typical method is really to focus in on lead ads that optimize to a lead magnet or something, or a white paper or download. What's interesting to me about LinkedIn is that it doesn't perform as well, even though it should. And I think it doesn't perform as well because LinkedIn doesn't have the powerful algorithm that Facebook does. Plus, it's actually substantially more expensive to run ads on LinkedIn.
It is very expensive. For other clients in the past, I've ran ads on LinkedIn, and not only were the results not there, and yeah, I blamed it myself. I didn't blame LinkedIn at the time, but maybe I should.
Well,
It was very expensive per click.
yeah, and it's just like, I think there's opportunities, like if so we typically focus our marketing and advertising with banners and native, and then like Facebook and Instagram, even for B2B, which I think is interesting.
Okay, yeah.
So you increased your prices after COVID kind of became the real deal in the United States. Tell us about that decision.
We didn't increase it because of COVID. That's for sure. In fact, I mean, to be fair, the people who use Ashore, we call them high velocity creatives. These are people who send hundreds of digital proofs per month. So these are your high performing agencies, your creative agencies. And very shortly after we launched the product, we discovered that, oh my God, there's a $2 billion market in the United States for promotional product apparel. So any print shop in the United States, and this is, I could get really into the weeds here, but it's a whole world that I didn't know about and really discovered between the suppliers and distributors of promotional product apparel. They are sending hundreds of proofs. And at the end of the day, our target audience was negatively affected by COVID, our customers. If there are no trade shows happening, for example, your product apparel, your promotional product companies, they're going to suffer. I knew a lot of creative agencies. Ours did great in COVID, but there were a lot that suffered and had massive layoffs. So therefore, we were negatively affected by COVID. Now, we did great this year. We've doubled our revenue in the year since COVID. So we've done great. That said, had COVID not been a reality, I think our target audience would not have suffered, and we would have done exponentially better as well. So we increased the price of our product because really, when we launched, we were giving a value-focused approach. We recognized that for some of the competitors in our space, we didn't have the longevity that they did. We hadn't been in the market as long as they had been. In some cases, we didn't have the features that they had. Following the launch of Ashore 3, we felt very strongly that we do everything better than our competitors in every way. And our customers began telling us that. One of our customers, I remember when we increased the price the first time after March, he said, "This is the price I thought I should have been paying all along." So it's things like that. At this point, we're still less expensive than our competitors, but we have a better product. And I think that's a really sweet spot to be in.
So is one of the things you're looking at in 2021, looking at the promotional printing industry and focusing on that, or keep to the core marketing and advertising agencies?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ashore is I would not call Ashore a very opinionated software, meaning that we're kind of digging ourselves into a hole. Mm-hmm. We're not in any corner. The software really appeals to a broad base. BuzzFeed has used Ashore for sending proposals to each other. So in a lot of ways, it's like a better DocuSign for that use case. Sure. So there's a whole bunch of different avenues that we can go down. One thing that we did in the middle of COVID was we signed a very large reseller agreement with a project management software, and that's going to allow us to reach all of their customers as well. So there's those avenues we'll be going down. The roadmap for us in the next year, we have a lot of great ideas that we can't wait to build out. So there's a lot of new features that we want to do. In terms of the audience, we are partnering with SAP, with Sage in the near future to help promote ourselves in this audience and give those people an advantage pricing. So yeah.
How do you make those brand partnerships happen? Is it like identifying the companies you want to work with and just dedicating folks to kind of reach out to them? Like, how does that come about?
I wish I was that strategic, truly. We do a lot of falling forward, honestly. We have a lot of people reach out to us instead.
That's great. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Like, when you're differentiated, like you are, like, I'm not surprised that companies are reaching out to you. We just onboarded a project management tool. We were using Monday. We're now using Rike.
Yeah.
I didn't like Monday. I mean, they're a good company.
Oh,
I see a lot of their ads, but
yeah.
Rike for me, I've really enjoyed.
I love Reich. It's just such an unfortunate name.
It is 100% an unfortunate name. I told my wife, I was like, hey, because she kind of like pays attention to what we're doing in our business. I was like, hey, we
Yeah.
onboard a new tool. She's like, what's it called? It's like Reich. She's like Reich? And I'm like, no, not that Reich. A different
Yeah.
Reich.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I got a lot of weird facial expressions in that few moments.
There's so many good project management software out there, and it's a really saturated market. The thing about Ashore, if you think about proofing software, it's really a niche of project management.
Right.
So it really isn't comprehensive. So some of our competitors, the 100-pound gorilla in the room, they try to be the project management as well as the proofing software. I'm not interested in doing this.
Sure.
I think we can do just as great being a really excellent, if not the best, proofing software that integrates really well with the Mondays.com and the Asanas and the Trellos and the, name it. At the end of the day, if Ashore were to try to be the next Monday, we're going to fail. We're not a $20 million VC funded company. We bootstrapped. We don't have anybody to answer to, and we don't have that kind of funding. We just have a lot of talent in the house. You know what I mean?
Tell us about a lesson or two that you've learned along the way. Like what's something that's like been really unexpected for you as you've made the move from being an employee to an employer, or separately moving from Brandcave to Ashore?
Yeah. The lessons that I've learned the hardest have been related to people and people management. I am by nature not a good communicator. They call it like the curse of knowledge. You just expect other people to know what you're talking about, and so there's brevity, right? I have to consciously be aware of explaining without over-explaining, and managing without micromanaging. And my kind of personality, I have to be consciously empathetic because I'm naturally not. And that's something that I don't like about myself, and I'm working on, of course, but I have to be aware of these things. And the greatest lessons have been managing correctly, communicating correctly, and communicating often, and building culture within our organization. And this is probably the greatest challenge to scalability, I think.
I can totally relate to everything you're saying, because I also have to manage without micromanaging and be consciously empathetic. I love that phrase. It's a great phrase. Not turn of phrase, but it's a good like way of describing it, because it totally fits. Like, yeah. To the point where we ended up hiring a chief operating officer who did really well to build process for us. One of the challenges we had a couple of years ago is we didn't have process. So not only did everything live in my brain, I also expected everyone to reach deep inside my brain to understand exactly what I was talking about, like you just described.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was a mess. They were unhappy. I was unhappy. Now, like, I know we're doing better because people are staying with us longer. Employees are staying with us longer. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. The problem is the most hurtful thing. Well, I don't even know if I could say it like that. The biggest challenges for us is when you're a VC funded company, for example, you have the ability of hiring rock stars, and out the gate they're going to be great, right? When you're in our situation, you have to be a little bit more strategic, and you have to decide to partner long-term with people. So when we onboard an employee, it's really a matter of saying, look, you're not where you need to be. We both acknowledge that, but I'm going to invest in you. And in return, I hope you invest in me. And the challenge has been that works out a lot, and it sometimes does not work out. Sometimes you create a rock star, you help create a rock star. These people do all the work themselves, but you supply the training and the resources, and then they're able to advance themselves in their careers, which is all good and really exciting. It's just bittersweet because you love those people, you've invested into them, and those are things that as a leader in an organization, I don't know if I've figured out a solution for it. I'm still learning those things.
How do you invest in people? When you say invest, what does that what does that look like?
Well, let's take a sales role, for example. What we've done is we have someone, her name is Ashley, she runs our sales. She is an absolute rock star. But she doesn't do any of the selling. We have people that we've hired for that. These people come on board with very little sales experience. And so what we've done is we've developed a system, a training method that takes about 3 months. And it begins with putting them in a support position, making sure they understand the product and the information. And meanwhile, we're teaching them sales techniques. We're giving them the resources. We're sitting one-on-one in coaching and saying, here is how that demo went that you just provided. Here's what I noticed. Here's how you can improve it. And then we're going to go and do that again. And by the way, we're going to call this guy right after, and we're going to offer this incentive. And here's how you're going to handle that. And so essentially, you're holding hands until they're ready to go off and be on their own and be really successful. So it's really investing in them so that they can be, like in a sales context, so that they can excel and they can, what I want for every single employee at Ashore, at Brandcave, is to have financial freedom, and the word that we use internally is economic flourishing. We want to make sure that our people are doing really, really good so that they want to be with us long term.
And when you are sitting aside the person who's being trained, who's the person, or what role is that person who is helping guide them to make those decisions?
I guess it just depends on the department, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a sales context, it's Ashley. It's our sales director who's sitting with each person.
Got it. That's fascinating. I like that. We've had challenges with that.
Yeah.
It's like, you just kind of do things, and one of the things that I've had to learn over the years is just to feel comfortable and confident that we'll figure it out. We'll have stumbles, and the process of creation is messy, and just to accept that.
Yeah, it's just a given, right? If I'm left to it, I'm gonna mess it up. The thing is, like, and I'm sure this is likely true for you as well. When I started Brandcave, I can do 5 things really well.
Right.
My first employee could do 1 of those 5 things really well, and there was no way that I could expect them to do 3 of those 5 things. But there's other things I could cross train on. I'm just in a position where I know how to write code. I know inbound marketing very well. I know UX design really well, and we do a lot of video work at Brandcave, so there's a lot of video in there. Those are individual things which you can have a successful career in, but scalability requires me to become less important in all of these things.
Right.
So it's making sure that each of those 5 things find the right person.
Awesome. I think we'll have to leave it there. Cody Miles, founder at Brandcave and Ashore. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you taking the time with me.
Definitely.